Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to episode 20 of the ESG Show. I want to tell you about something that happened on September the 24th, a couple of days ago, 6:45 p.m. in California, because something important happened. Lithium-ion batteries discharged 5.223 gigawatts, providing 18% of 29 gigawatts of demand. And this was a record, beating the previous record set a month before. This article in Canaria Media tells more. It says that in 2020, California had 500 megawatts of grid battery storage. Now, just 3 years later, it has over 5,000 megawatts. That's a tenfold increase in 3 years. But actually, as this chart shows, this exponential rate has been going on for quite a while now. And in fact, it's increased, I think it's increased about 300-400-fold since 2016, which I take a lot of optimism from that data. Also, before we get started, I want to tell you about the results of a survey we recently conducted. We asked, what is the greatest opportunity that comes with communicating your brand sustainability goals? And then we gave options: inspiring change, and inspiring change secured a third of the votes, just ahead of building trust, followed by gathering engagements, only just behind on 26%, with competitive advantage getting just 11% of the votes. We had a couple of comments. David Osmond said, I would argue that building trust, gathering engagement support, and inspiring change are all competitive advantages. And Miranda Kennedy said, as a board director, I advise CEOs on partnering with companies that have similar ESG goals for 2 reasons: increased profits and attracting new shareholders. And also, we have a couple of other comments as well. Now, to let you into a bit of a secret, when the show kicks off, behind the scenes, we have the outstanding Katie Sims. And Katie Sims has made a comment today. She says she's really looking forward to this conversation. I've met a lot of small business owners who are too scared to actually talk about their sustainability goals and what they're doing in terms of being eco-friendly for fear of greenwashing. It's a big risk for smaller companies, but there is also so much opportunity to stand out of the crowd if you communicate it effectively. Of course, as Katie's behind the scenes making the show go happen, I have to introduce her as outstanding. Otherwise, well, you just don't know what will happen. Also today, we have a comment from Bob Pujacek and he said, if ESG is going to be used by companies, it needs to be standardized. There are some international groups that are starting the process. Otherwise, publicly traded companies will submit disclosures to the International Standards Board, ISSB, and they will work with ESG rating and data products providers to create the ESGs that will be used by the capital markets and others. The plan is currently in discussion and is supported by International Organization of Securities Commissions, IOSCO. This information should be brought up in the I was reading some advice that he had there. So he wanted me to mention that in today's discussion. Okay, on the show today, we have Anna Öhrling. Hello, Anna. Have I said your name correctly?
Pretty close. Öhrling, but I like the use of the umlauts. But nice to be here, Michael.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you. So Anna is the founder of Tuulee, a sustainability communications consultancy based in Amsterdam. She believes brands can play a pivotal role in accelerating sustainability progress by focusing on purpose, transparency, and collaboration. She has a master's in sustainability and social innovation and has worked with world-famous companies such as Diageo, Mars, H&M Group, Liberes, and Visa on their sustainability communications. So, Anna, I'm feeling a bit mean today, so I'm going to ask you a difficult question. A couple of years ago, Terry Smith, and now Terry Smith is sometimes known as the Warren Buffett of UK investing. He's a very, very successful fund manager. And he said as follows: Unilever seems to be labouring under the weight of a management which is obsessed with publicly displaying sustainability credentials at the expense on focusing on the fundamentals of the business. The most obvious manifestation of this is the public spat it has become embroiled in over the refusal to supply Ben & Jerry's ice cream in the West Bank. However, we think there are far more ludicrous examples which illustrate the problem. A company which feels it has to define the purpose of Hellmann's mayonnaise had, in our view, clearly lost the plot. So, Anna, have they lost the plot? What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, absolutely not. I mean, I think the comments are just the epitome of short-termism. It's just a real clear misunderstanding of the power of purpose and communicating well about sustainability. Because I think what I would go back with as a kind of retort would be that to think that the fundamentals of business don't include investment into the business's impact on the environment or society is just, it's just so short-termist. I think that's the best way of explaining it. A bit how you showed the questions that you'd asked earlier of like, what are the opportunities that come with this? Building that kind of long-term trust and actually using purpose as a strategic lever for the success of the business is, I think, what successful businesses of the future will have to do.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Well, what does a fund manager care about the long term anyway?
Exactly.
Or am I getting into trouble for saying that? I don't know. Also on the show today, we have Aubrey Wallace. Aubrey has been on the show before. Hello, Aubrey.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me back. I'm glad to be on the ESG show again.
It's our pleasure. We have the bad news is that Orb was threatening to have a puppy on the show today, but changed her mind. So sorry about that. Rather disappointing news. But she's the co-founder and strategist behind Dandelion Branding, a marketing agency dedicated to elevating the impact of social and environmental businesses. When she isn't working on a project, you can usually find her nosing in the forest or giving congratulatory high fives to her plants for growing, which seems like fairly unusual behavior, but there you go. Let's not go there. So, how do you elevate the impact of social, environmental impact businesses? How do you elevate that?
Yeah, so that's a big question because that's what I spend all my time doing. But with Dandelion, so we work with brands that are creating tangible solutions in legacy businesses. What do I mean by that? Like water for purification that is in oil and gas, for instance. They create 24 billion gallons of unusable water every single day. So we work with one of our clients is working on helping them solve that issue. And their technology makes it so pure that it can be used for agriculture, which helps solve water scarcity issues. So we work with projects like that. They're on Desert. You should check them out. Little plug there. Sorry. We also do this with our own work, with the clients we do have and with our own site. We help them reduce their own digital carbon footprint. So while we're raising the awareness around whatever it is that they're doing with their project or with the problem that they're solving or talking about their solution, we're also reducing the impact that their website, their content has on the environment in general. Every single web page that you have has a physical footprint, right? So we try to reduce that stuff. We also run our own podcast. It's called Environmental with Dandelion. And we speak with folks that are dedicated to the sustainable transition that allows us to keep our community involved and to understand the roles that everyone is playing in this transition to a more sustainable future. Okay,
thank you for that, Orb. And finally on the show today, we have a veteran of the ESG show, Rob Cheesewright. Rob is a climate policy expert and experienced media commentator. In 2021, Rob joined the climate tech startup Pinwheel, where he is Chief Impact Officer. Previous to Pinwheel, Rob was Policy and Communications Director at Britain's most ambitious net zero behaviour change campaign, Smart Energy GP. Between you and me, I actually believe that Rob considers appearing on the ESG show to be the highlight of his career. Is that true, Rob?
Definitely, yeah.
what more can I say? So what is a net zero behavior change campaign? What's that?
Yeah, well, in that instance, it was trying to get every single household and small business in the UK to move to smart electricity metering. And why that was important is that is the underpinning infrastructure for electric vehicles, for heat pumps, the whole electrification of our grid. And net zero wouldn't happen without it. The big problem with that is no one really knew what a meter was. It was just this ugly thing under your stairs. No one knew that they wanted electric vehicles or heat pumps at that point. Indeed, most people don't. So we had to really build brand around the idea of all of this. And what was really interesting about that is that is actually the biggest thing to do around behavior is uptake decisions. We often talk about people's choice around eating less meat or flying less, and that's important. But actually the big stuff is what are people going to purchase or allow people to install in their homes. And that is obviously core to what marketers are doing every single day is driving those purchase decisions. So we're all making those kind of, at our best, making net zero behavior change campaigns. This one was purely net zero, but I think almost every single marketer listening to this will be in that space.
Okay, thank you, Rob. We've just had a comment from Martin Viover, who I believe has commented before, despite the fact that I probably make a pig's ear pronouncing his name every time. And he said, let's make a purpose statement for a few companies. We make connections. Yes, purpose can be helpful for some companies, but there remains a high skill, a high risk. For only PR, it is not applicable. That's useful to many B2B companies. Okay, well, thank you for that comment. Now we turn to that part of the show. We look at some recent editorial. And Rob, I think we'll kick off with you because you spotted an article in Business Green, Milestone Task Force for Nature-Related Financial Disclosures publishes final recommendations. So what's all this about then, Rob?
Yes, this is a really big deal, actually. It's something that companies, particularly large companies, will now have coming down the track at them over the next few years. So we've probably lived over the last 18 to 24 months this frenzy of climate disclosures, and almost every sustainability team and sustainability professionals watching this will have that as part of their daily life. We're about to get that on nature. And I think what's really exciting about that is, well, partly the big picture is that we have a biodiversity and nature crisis that is just as important as the climate crisis, and indeed they're linked. But nature provides us potentially with much more brand opportunity than we have with carbon. A ton of carbon is not tangible. General members of the public don't fully understand that, and the journey to net zero is hard to understand. But with nature, brands are going to have the opportunity to do amazing work, tangible work, inspiring and beautiful work. And that is all grist for the mill of great communications. So there's a real brand opportunity as well as an important disclosure task that we're all going to have over the next few years.
Okay, thanks for that, Rob. Well, now thanks to the Apple ad, we know what Mother Nature looks like, don't we? So maybe she can give us a presentation once a year or something. Anna, I gather you spotted a piece, the United Nations to fashion. Stop pushing over consumption. What's all this about then?
I think it's a wonderful moment to kind of start seeing how really there's been a shift in how sustainability teams need to be working together with marketing and brand teams. And I think that the UN has really picked up on it here, specifically looking at fashion, obviously a hugely impactful industry on the climate and biodiversity. And what they're saying here is that marketing has to have a role in stopping overconsumption, that there's only so much work that can be done at a policy level, at the sustainability level, indeed at regulation level, that really now it's a role for brands and marketing to start actually changing behaviors and to get people to want to buy less, perhaps to start thinking about mending more or renting clothes. So really, if we're going to be driving this behavior change, that simply won't happen unless marketing teams start really making that a priority. And I think it was a It's wonderful that the UNA has recognized this, but I think the fact that they've also created a communications playbook to help smaller and medium-sized businesses as well on how you can actually communicate in a more effective way to meet our climate goals.
Okay, thanks for that. So I think the topic of renting clothes has come up before. And do you think that's something that maybe the younger people are more willing to accept? Do you think, is that a younger person's thing, or do you think age has no relevance to this?
I don't mean to sound ageist. I think it could be for all ages, depending on the person. But I think that in terms of trying out new behaviors, of kind of trying to shift the traditional way away from the old as such, is something that young people tend to do more. I think that there's also more of a pressure on young people to constantly be seen wearing the latest trends, looking great. Perhaps they don't have the kind of same opportunity that older people have to have had invested into a wardrobe that they already love, right? And they think that there's a pressure to look cool in today's world. And I think fashion brands are able to provide that without necessarily pushing everyone to overconsumption. Okay,
thanks for that. Well, I don't think I can be accused of ageist because of my age, and I would agree with you. So thank you for that. Orb. Now, you spotted an article, ASA ruling on Anglian water services. Oh, I forgot to mention, by the way, that last piece was Business Fashion Publication. Should have mentioned that. Sorry, Orb. ASA ruling on Anglian Water Services Limited. What's this one about, and what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I did find this one. The ASA is the governing body for claims in specifically the UK. And they choose, in case you don't know, they choose the cases that they see based on community complaints. So this particular case is interesting because it talks about Anglian Water Service and how they omitted their history of dumping sewage, not about their current work. So I like seeing that because we're seeing more and more greenwashing claims be sent to the ASA, which means that people are really starting to care about how companies are communicating about their environmental impact. And in this case, they're looking into the past. So they're saying, wait, not only is Anglian the only service that we can choose from, but they have a past of dumping sewage into the environment. And now they're saying that they're doing all this work to clean it up. And people had a really big issue with that, which is really important. But it also kind of leads me to wonder is how far we should go in thumping businesses that are working towards changing their practices, especially when they're in their large businesses and they're very old. How do we say that was bad in the past, but also good job and thank you for making this change without also like bringing a case that could be a really big deal for them? And I think through communication, like had Anglian been like, we're changing our behavior and just owned it, that could have been a better beginning to that ad, or it probably would have decreased the amount of misleading claims that the ASA heard from them.
Okay, thanks. Before we move on to the next one, Anna and Rob, have either of you got any comments to make so far?
Yeah, I think just on Rob's point, I couldn't agree more. I think that the main thing that I always advocate for businesses of any size to kind of counter that is that's why we need data transparency. Because I think any company that's trying to say that they're perfect is only going to get this kind of greenwashing slam on them because there is no such thing. But instead, that if the company can focus on being transparent of their previous and future impact, then that's the kind of best way for people to navigate this very difficult and new world of greenwashing.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you for that. And Anna, and once again, you can stay on the screen. Just one more piece to discuss. Nearly 300, this is in Adweek publication, nearly 300 agencies and 6 major holding companies are working for fossil fuel clients. That actually reminds me of when I was younger. when all the advertising agency they really wanted to handle a tobacco company. It was really the sort of the glamour end of the market, and that's changed quite a lot. So anyway, they're now working for 300 agencies are working for fossil fuel clients. What are your thoughts about this?
It's interesting you talk about tobacco, because I said the first point I wanted to say is that this is an amazing organization called Clean Creatives, who are on a mission to make big oil the next tobacco. And they recognize the fact that marketing and PR are what have kind of kept big oil going as long as they have. So have given them kind of this ability to spread false information and to create confusion. And so what Clean Creatives are, what they do is that they create an annual F list of the agencies around the world who are actually taking money and taking briefs from big oil, and they're kind of calling them out for it. And the reason that they do that is because so many of them have this kind of themselves, this PR kind of fluff around their own impact goals. And they recognize that actually, if they can get most people who work at these companies to feel not only embarrassed to work there, but to also potentially stop working there, you're actually removing the legs of the PR machine of big oil. So yeah, Clean Creatives are an amazing organization, and I thought that it was just a wonderful campaign that they launched this year against big oil.
Okay, thank you for that, Anna. Now we are going to, I'm going to be having a chat with Orb for a few minutes. Hello, Orb. Welcome back. Orb, what does marketing for sustainability mean?
Yeah, this is a great question, Michael. So it means a couple of different things. One, it means for us, it means choosing our clients based on the impact that they have or the potential impact that they have. That means working with folks that are, like I said earlier, creating tangible solutions within legacy businesses, or bringing new tech, or really old, improving really old systems like regenerative agriculture. But it also means the opposite is true, that we need to be focused on not choosing to work with companies that are part of an old paradigm shift. It's a perfect segue, because we were just talking about folks that are working for oil and gas. We wouldn't do that. Sometimes we get questions from agricultural, we get asked, hey, can you come help us talk about farming? And we look into their work, and what they're really asking for is for us to help them greenwash or make it look like they're doing more for the environment or the social impact than they really are. So for us, it means really looking into who we're working with, and then additionally making sure that the marketing techniques that we use aren't bogging down the digital carbon footprint of that company.
All right. Okay. Now, I was wondering whether you could give us a tip. What are a few marketing techniques that you could recommend? Can you give us some clever idea?
Yeah, I have a favorite. This is a topic I can talk about for a very long time, and we're, pressed for time. So my favorite tip is to go through your website and find all of the tags. This is especially relevant for older sites, for 5 years plus. Find all the tags and delete them if you're not working for them. If you're not working with tags directly. A tag creates a page on your website, and every page has a physical footprint, some server in some world. So on average, we end up deleting like 100 to 200 pages of the website by getting rid of the tags you're not using. Don't even get me started on like misspelled tags. Like, how many times, you know, in the old way, we used to think an SEO tip is just to like tag as many different things as you could. All of those tags made pages. And then if you misspelled something, it made a misspelled page. Yeah. Delete them. Get them out of there. Clean it right out.
All right. Okay. Thanks for that. Good tip. Get rid of the old tabs. And also I want to talk to you about the word sustainability.
Yeah.
I think you've just sort of wondered whether we need to perhaps think about not using that word.
Yeah.
Correctly?
I have an unpopular opinion on this one. I think in the sustainability sector right now, you see a lot of people talking about changing the word sustainability and not using it anymore. I think that would be a mistake. I think we should keep using the term sustainability and make it really clear that it's kind of a beginner's way of getting people into this. People often talk about it being washed out, being devalued, people not having interest anymore. And you see that a lot in the sustainability sector directly. But what I think we're seeing is 7 billion people starting to understand or take hold of a concept. We can't expect it. We can't expect a term like sustainability to stay the exact same it was when we're talking about such a massive concept. But we can deepen that knowledge so that when someone does step into our sustainability bubble, we can say, okay, now let's talk about regeneration. Let's talk about what it takes to get to the ability to be sustainable. You know, that's when you can learn. But I think the term sustainability is here to stay, what the mainstream understands. And let's just like get mainstream, let's get 7 billion people on board with sustainability and then get them talking about what's our action plan.
Okay, that's interesting. I like controversial views anyway. And maybe when all of us are chatting earlier, we could return to that comment because I think that's very interesting. Now, Rob and Anna are going to be having a conversation for a few minutes. Now, I just need to warn everybody that they were threatening to do a song and dance number. So I'm just hoping that that was just a threat and a joke and not meant, but we'll soon find out. So Rob and Anna, over to you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Michael. And we're going to talk about claims, and because I think a lot of the challenges that brands have been facing is how to do claims well, and a lot of the issues that we've been seeing with greenwashing about where they've got unstuck on claims. So, I mean, I'll start with the broadest question, Anna. You know, what are the kind of claims we're seeing, and how do we make them good?
It's the broadest, but it's the hardest one to start with, Rob. I love it. So yeah, I think claims are such a kind of broad spectrum. And I think something that you and I have talked about before, which I think is quite useful to bring up, is this kind of idea of hero and hygiene claims. And by what we mean by that, for the people listening, is hygiene claims are almost the ones that you absolutely as a business should be doing. That need to be measurable, that should be on your website, that needs to be transparent, needs to be data-led. It really is perhaps, for want of a better expression, the slightly more boring claims. So recyclability, for example, something that's unlikely to really get someone to make a connection with your brand, but might tip them over the edge when they are choosing it. Versus then the hero claims, those are really like where the storytelling and the magic happens, where you can really differentiate either as a brand or product or a service, and usually driven by significant investment into whatever claim it is that you want to make. And I think that's kind of what we talked about before, Rob, right? The kind of this magic, the storytelling. And I'd love to hear a bit more from you on that.
Yeah, I mean, and it requires the investment, and you've kind of nailed that. I think one of the big challenges we often get with claims is that brands come to us and say, I need to be able to say I'm this. And actually the real question is, I am this, now how do I communicate it? And so the investment comes first. I mean, that's where we've been focusing our efforts at Pinwheel in terms of helping brands fund the most impactful projects that enable storytelling, because it helps unpick the difficult thing that people are doing, which is, when am I reporting and when am I making a claim?
Yeah.
I think a lot of the brands have got stuck trying to make claims out of things they should be reporting, particularly where what they're reporting isn't a wholly perfect story, and they need to talk about the journey they're on, but they're trying to make a claim out of the bit that's good, or the bit that they've improved. And I guess that's a little bit back to where we were, the kind of the water companies thing, is they were making big claims about what they were doing, and actually a more honest story about where they are on their journey would have been better. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think it's also a good moment to also recognize that there's a big difference in brand communications versus, for example, ESG reporting communications. And they often, again, like you were saying, kind of get, because they're all coming from data, usually from the sustainability team, they kind of get a bit confused. And I think the fact that it's just the strategic process that you need to go through to figure out what it is. But I think what's amazing about Pinwheel is that it also enables SMEs to invest in those stories, because I imagine a lot of people on this call might also be thinking it's fine for the kind of massive companies that we all know to kind of, they've got those funds that they can invest a couple of mil into incredible biodiversity stories, for example. But I think giving that ability for smaller companies as well is absolutely key. They're the backbone of, well, at least the European economies, SMEs. So how do we enable that?
Absolutely. I think first they can be more nimble, aren't they? And they're also not so captured by reporting fatigue. And so many people have got stuck going at reporting and reporting and reporting and reporting, and just never get to the action bit and making impact. And so they have that potential to do that, and they're less stuck. I think that's really important. And they also don't necessarily feel the need to shortcut to claims. And I think the other big challenge we've got is, there's this acronym soup of certifications and claims and all these things. And people, we see marketing teams do it all the time, go, oh, we're carbon neutral, or we are, we've got this banner. And they tend to be really rubbish claims, because either the reality doesn't support that claim, particularly if they're carbon neutral as a result of offsetting. Stop doing that. But also,
or keep doing that, but do more.
Don't do carbon neutral version of it. Do contribute to amazing projects with a big budget and do it properly. But also, they're not really great for storytelling. No one's really impressed, or no one can really be enlivened by the fact that we are compliant with acronym X, because I think we need to just go back to marketing 101, right? Which is, what is the emotion that you want to create in your consumer, right? To create that relationship. And it's very unlikely that a set of acronyms is going to really elicit that kind of warmth, or this idea of a response to your brand or product that you actually want. So I think it's always, what's the value that you can bring to a consumer? And I think perhaps because this is such a new world for the world of marketing, sustainability, that I think a lot of people kind of feel a bit paralyzed as to what they should be doing with all this information. And I think it's just, I think it's a reminder to all the marketeers out there to kind of trust your gut, and what you're doing, and that you should, absolutely, consumers first, elicit that emotion, but then root it all in data and transparency and great storytelling. Yeah, I think that's the answer, isn't it? Because we've got that inertia, that sense of, oh my God, all of this data and all these claims. There's the potential for incredible marketers to cut through all of that and find the real story, find the real impact for the planet first, but then the thing where the brand wins. So it's the marketing that can be the heroes here. Michael, back to you.
Thank you very much. And great chat. Not going to give you good marks for dancing, though, I'm afraid. 2 for the dancing.
I was promised an interpretive dance here.
Yeah, very, very disappointing.
Next time,
I'll give you a 9 for the conversation, though. A little earlier, Orr was talking about this idea of the term sustainability. And I just wondered if either of you two guys had any thoughts about that.
I mean, I certainly do, and I'm completely with Orb on this. I think there's the reason I like it is because it is broad enough to capture everything we need it to. And yes, we do then need to drill down into specificity after, because clearly being more sustainable is a version of just being unsustainable. It's actually a binary word, either you're sustainable or you're not. But the real risk and the real thing we're seeing loads of brands doing is get carbon tunnel vision. And what sustainability does is enables us to talk about biodiversity, waste, nature, all of the other important parts of this.
Social justice. I mean, that's the other thing, right? This is not just environment, that the sustainability allows us as a word to kind of encompass the complexity of the situation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's crucially important impact stuff. We will fail unless we have that breadth. But also, more so than carbon, it's again where the storytelling lives. So without, I think, a broad sustainability agenda, we kind of fail on both fronts.
Totally.
Okay, I think in the US, where climate change itself is a little bit more controversial, I think there is a definite preference to talk about sustainability rather than and less about CO2 or whatever. We had a question earlier, and I think it was after you did your thing about the ASA. Emily Highmore Talbot said, I would agree, but surely we must celebrate when businesses are consciously making a step change to improve business practices. Although I accept water has some big challenges right now. So should be celebrating what progress that is made.
Yeah, I think celebrating is a big word because solving problems you create should be the norm, but it's not, right? So I think pat yourself on the back for, solving an issue you created, but being honest and saying, okay, I had this, we made this mistake, with Anglia, and it's like, we put sewage into the environment. That was bad. We're fixing that now, and creating the story around how, they started as the bad guy and became the good guy. It's like the plot of every Disney movie ever. You can really bring that into people's hearts and not be like, we're perfect now. So celebrating, I don't know, but a hero's journey is much more interesting than the celebration.
That last bit's it. I mean, actually you get so much better results and so much more credibility from your stakeholders by telling that real journey rather than just trying to hero the good thing in. Because everyone sits there and goes, that's rubbish. We know it's rubbish. What the ASA do in terms of protecting consumers is important, but actually most of the time consumers know when you're full of rubbish, sewage. So, you've got to do that. The ASA, if they were in the room, they'd just say, well, don't overclaim. It's really that straightforward. You can celebrate the good stuff, but don't overclaim and don't minimize the stuff that went wrong, because if you do that, then you'll fall foul.
Yeah.
Okay, so talking about overclaiming, or maybe not overclaiming, we've had a question from Dawn Rennick, and she wants to know what you all think of the recent Apple advert, the Mother Nature ad. Of course, it has to be discussed, doesn't it? I hope everyone watching this has seen it now. Mother Nature. Anna, any thoughts about the Apple advert? Have we got a technical problem there? Or Rob, any thoughts about the Mother Nature advert?
I liked it. I will say I didn't get a big greenwashing vibe. I liked that they are sharing what they did. I liked that they did it really creatively. And this, again, goes back to kind of people saying, people like really thumping big business for what they did in the past, rather than like celebrating using the term celebration, rather than accepting or celebrating where they're going. I think they set a really good example. And yeah, I do think it was brilliant marketing. That said, the most sustainable choice you can make for your friends or calling your friends is the phone that's in your hand right now, not buying the new one. So it's also like hits that overconsumption a little uncomfortable for me.
Yeah, I'm guilty as charged because I've recently changed phones. But then my other one wasn't it was 3 years old. I paid for it. That's great. It was so nice that I know I'd paid for my phone, and then it started going slow on me and started misbehaving. And I felt like I had no choice. So
Yep.
But I do wonder whether they deliberately, I'm a little cynical about the way these things immediately start going wrong after 3 years. Anna, you're back. You didn't hear me earlier when I was talking to you, but talking about the Apple advert.
I think Ob is spot on with the point, and I think it's kind of a little bit to that point earlier as well about behavior change. But now we're looking at other, I guess, technology companies potentially. So Apple. So first of all, I think I agree that the ad is actually overall great in terms of the direction it heads in terms of kind of bringing actual interest to that story. I think that, yes, agree also that pushing over consumption is not the way to go. I think that there's a lot of questions about the social side of the sustainability story that they're emitting. I think there's a lot about recycling they're emitting. So by no means perfect, but I think it's an opportunity for brands to actually be leading the way. And I mean, if there's a company that's synonymous with leading the way, it's probably Apple. And so it'll be really interesting to see who's gonna follow them, who's gonna better it. I think it would have been almost incomprehensible or unimaginable to imagine this kind of 4 years ago, even as a piece of communications and storytelling. So for me, a thumbs up, but also not thinking that it's perfect by any means, but it's a step in the right direction.
Okay, and Rob, Apple, Mother Earth.
Yeah, I think they've raised the bar, haven't they? Which is, I mean, a powerful thing that brands can do. I've got a refurbished phone, so I didn't buy mine new, and before that I had a fair phone. But what I found fascinating is when it landed, all of the sustainability nerds on my Twitter feed were trying to work out what was really underlying it. What is the real sustainability of the new version? So I mean, it's always good when you've kind of got all the sustainability nerds kind of deeply burrowing away, and they kind of split evenly between some going, this is great, and some saying this is less good. So I found it fascinating as a kind of study of behavior as the kind of deep nerds got involved to try and work out what was going on. But that shows that that's the next piece, really. There needs to be that real transparency about, okay, how much better is this and how much further do we still have to go?
Okay, I didn't quite catch the comment that appeared on the screen just now about using a Fairphone, but I think you noticed it, Orb, and you seem to react positively to that comment.
Fairphone is a company, they're a Dutch-based company that you can like pull apart and you can buy individual pieces to fix it if you break it. Oh. And they're one of the only phones that actually has the sustainability score. It's in the 80s.
Very interesting. Oh, we'll have to try and get them on the. We'll have to try and get them on the ESG show. Okay.
I had an early one, but the later ones, which wasn't so good, but the later ones are really good. Or get refurbished or Fairphone. Be my tip.
Yeah. Our phones are going to change, especially in the EU with the right to repair directive. So I imagine Fairphone is no longer going to be the only option. Nokia is already doing it as well, but in the coming years. But yeah, right to repair, absolutely. I think there was a comment about planned obsolescence as well. I think that's why.
There was a comment about planned obsolescence. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Yes. Yeah. So that's the antidote to planned obsolescence would be this Fairphone. Okay, yeah. Interesting. Manish Gupta. She's got a couple of questions. So she's saying, I think Nanish is a she. I'm so apologies if it's not. Is not having an official sustainability agenda a binary decision? Not quite sure what that means, but maybe you might have a better feel for what that means than I do. I'll tell you what, whilst you're thinking about that, let's have the other question from Nanish. Similar to ESG, is the sustainability the new target for greenwashing? Kind of quite tricky questions there. I don't know if you have any thoughts about either of those two questions.
I mean, the main thing I would say is, I mean, every brand is going to need to have a sustainability strategy that needs to be real targets, real delivery. You know, they need to get hardcore about this, and they need to get hardcore about it soon. But it's a real brand opportunity, and it's a real opportunity. The binary decision I think that I see happening at the moment is, are we really investing in this and really making it core to our business, or is this a little thing at the side that we try and make a little bit of a greener wash of ourselves, maybe have a sustainability person in the corner who we hope fixes these problems for us. So I think the real decision is, do we make this really central to our business? Do we invest properly? Do we wring out all of the brand benefit as a result? Or do we kind of leave it on the side and that'll go wrong?
Okay, I must offer my apologies to Nanish for calling you a she. So sorry about that. Sorry about getting your gender wrong. Okay, and one more comment from Ananya. Building credibility for a sustainability-based company would be very important. I want to get your insight on how important it is, and so how important do you think it is to build a sustainability-based company?
Yeah, go ahead, Anna.
No, I think the question focuses rightly on credibility, because without that, there's no chance for the brand to exist in the long term, especially if it has a sustainability claim at the heart of the brand's DNA. I think not only with the kind of people looking out for greenwashing, consumers would catch you out. Regulation is slowly starting to catch up, as well as your peers and other stakeholders. So I think that credibility has to sit at the very heart of it. And I think there's credibility comes from a simple fact of not lying. I find it really interesting that we know that as brands, you try to create these emotional bonds with people, yet that brands feel comfortable lying is quite extraordinary when we think that the basis of any good relationship of trust is honesty. And that's really the heart of building that credibility in the long term for a sustainable brand.
I love that. It just don't lie.
Yeah, it's surprisingly simple.
Yeah.
And on the topic of just not lying, can we talk a little bit about greenwashing for a moment? I mean, what does greenwashing actually mean, and why do we care?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about it. Greenwashing is where you intentionally or unintentionally inflate the social or environmental work that you do as a brand, in a nutshell. And I think we care about this for a few reasons. One is that if you're lying about your impact, then you are bringing in customers and consumers that trust you, and then their impact is lower because you're lying about it. The other thing is when you juxtapose that with green hushing, which is where, like Katie mentioned earlier, or you mentioned that Katie said earlier about brands that are afraid to talk about their impact because they don't want to be called out for greenwashing. When there's a brand greenwashing and that isn't actually doing the work, and then brands that are really putting in the work, but they're not talking about it, it means that greenwashers get to set the expectation. And that is a big problem, because then we have a lie as our expectation for what's possible about the future and the transition to a more sustainable world.
I love that. And I think the way that I often talk about it is that the reason it keeps greenwashing as a concept keeps me up at night is because, to Ob's point, then if you have the greenwashers who get the kind of credit almost for fake information, then what happens is that you start losing that trust that we were just talking about, that consumers think, well, I can't trust any brand anyway about their sustainability criteria, which means that then they'll stop investing in sustainability. Why have a potentially higher price point if I don't believe any of their claims anyway, which then means that there is no more incentive for brands to be investing in sustainability in the long term because they've already lost those customers, which means that we've failed and we lose the fight for the meeting the climate goals that are necessary.
And trust is so precious in the political sphere as well, in that there are people who are looking at this cynically and are looking for our failures and point them out every time. They go, look, that's why net zero is rubbish. That's why sustainability is rubbish. It's all a lie. You're being, it feeds that conspiracy theorist thing that unravels us all. And it goes back to the previous question that was asked, which is about how can sustainability-based companies win in a world where unsustainable companies can get all the brand benefit. And the real challenge of distinctiveness, and that's where marketing does its best work in that kind of white space where no one else is. That exists because the white space is where people are telling the truth, where no one else is doing it, and where you're truly a leader. If you can claim that you're a leader when you're not, then that just means that kind of all of us involved in this work have no fewer tools in our kit to be able to help the planet win, but then help brands win when they do the right thing.
Okay, thank you for that. Now, this is quite miraculous, but we're pretty much on time. I suppose that's what happens when we have communications experts on the show. I think that although we are a minute over, I think I just asked you one fantastically difficult question, and I can give you 30 seconds to answer it. So basically, I want you to tell me everything you know about marketing in 30 seconds. Well, not quite, but something similar to that. How should businesses approach their sustainability communication strategy? Big question. So really, can you answer it sort of like in 2 sentences each? Who fancies having a go at that one first? Anna, you're nodding your head, which might have been a mistake.
Yeah, I'm happy to go. A business's sustainability strategy should first and foremost be focused on what makes sense for the product or brand. It shouldn't just necessarily be something random. So first of all, what is the investment that you want to make that will guarantee your business to succeed in the future, but also is going to have impact? And then therefore the sustainability comms strategy is how do you start actually building that in the long term by telling the great stories around it, and creating that trust with your customers in the long run. It's really as simple as do something good that makes sense for your brand, that builds your business, and therefore that creates that long-term reputation and trust.
Okay, thank you. Rob, can you do something in 3 sentences?
I can't beat Anna's because that's absolutely the answer. The key is to focus on the impact, do the thing first, and then the claims will follow. Don't focus on what claims can I make, because that's when you get stuck taking shortcuts like offsetting that doesn't work. The one thing I would just add in is look to nature, look to biodiversity, because that not only drives purchasing decisions higher than carbon does, but also increase price. So there's definitely some places to look that are underdeveloped by your competitors where you can get brand benefit for doing the right thing.
Impact before claims, look to nature.
Yeah.
Okay, and then Orb. Orb, somebody who likes to give her plants high fives. What are your thoughts? Can you do this one in 3 sentences?
Yeah, because they already gave the answer. So I get to just say, do the work, keep it honest, and make it simple to understand.
Honesty seems to be a common theme today, and honestly, our time is up. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. See you all next week, and thank you, and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.